So another quarter of 4% organic revenue growth. Here we are in Davos talking about the big picture trends for the world economy. What do your results say about the global economy right now?
Well, certainly it says that when you have products that appeal to consumers and delivered to them when and where they want to get it, that they get excited and they buy it. And I'm excited. This is the second quarter in a row we've been able to grow organic sales ahead of the market. And it tells you that superior products consumers will still buy.
So is it an execution story with some of the changes you've made within the organization that we've talked about, getting rid of the matrix structure, or an overall better view on consumer?
I think the consumer is still very engaged. I've heard a lot of stories about the consumer not engaging. That's not been our experience. Whether it's U.S., China, or around the world, the consumer is willing to buy products that meet their needs. At the end of the day, they want a product that delivers benefit, and they want it delivered for a great value. And so the superiority strategy that we have is working, and it's underpinned by the productivity that allows us to invest in delivering better products. And you're right, though, about the organization. Everything that happens at P&G happens because we have outstanding, engaged, agile, and accountable organization.
What's the level of innovation right now in terms of the products?
It's very high, and it's across all 10 of our categories. And to me, that's what's required right now. In order to win, you've got to be able to innovate on all parts of your business model, the product, the package, how you communicate to consumers, how you deliver it to consumers, either online or offline, and it's got to be a great value to the consumer. When that comes together, the consumer's delighted, and you're able to win the value proposition.
What gave you the confidence to raise the top end of the sales forecast? What do you see out into the future?
And what we've seen that underpins the sales growth is share growth. And that's critical because it says you're winning, your products are winning. So we now have share growth on the past 1 and 3 months globally. In our biggest country, the U.S., we're growing share the last month, last 3 months, last 6 months, last 12 months. And we're seeing other important markets like China actually accelerate, which is very important. So our top 15 markets all grew sales over the last quarter. So with that, we thought it was appropriate to go ahead and raise the upper end of our guidance range because we believe that consumers are coming into our brands because they see them providing great value.
I want to get to the China story, a
Yes.
lot to unpack there. But first, just on the business, it wasn't broad-based fully. I mean, grooming was still declining. What did you see in that business?
Well, grooming still remains a challenging category for us, but we're bringing innovation. In fact, one of our biggest innovations is hitting the market right now. And we believe with both innovation and improved communication, and there's been some communication recently that we think is very much connecting with consumers, that we will be able to both grow the category. Oh, yes, be the best. And certainly
that was so controversial.
That started a conversation. What we want to do is we want to connect with consumers, and there are some things that we do need to talk about. There is an issue with toxic masculinity, and what we wanted to do was show that there are some things, whether it's bullying or sexist behavior, that we can be better. And to me, men are stepping up, and we showed in the commercial very clear examples of that happening. And while there was a very well-organized but small number that did not like that initially, what we've seen is each day more and more people coming in and saying they connect with that and they understand that it is a relevant message. Conversation will lead to understanding and improved behavior by all of us.
Do you actually see a sales impact, either positive or negative, as a result of this commercial?
It's too early really to see, and it only broke a week and a half ago, but we've had 90 million views of that spot, which says it certainly has connected with people, and it started an important conversation. And to me, I think men want to be better on this, and I think men are stepping up.
Were you inspired at all by Nike's Colin Kaepernick campaign?
Certainly, we've seen a number of examples. The one that really inspired us was our Like a Girl campaign that we aired a few years ago, and that communicated an important message where teen girls at puberty were seeing their confidence drop. And when we ran that ad, what we saw is people's view of the phrase like a girl moved from 19% positive to 79% positive, and it lifted the brand. So it was good for business. It communicated an important societal message. And we've seen the same thing with the talk, which also talked about an important topic, and now this ad. So I think brands need to stand for something, and they need to deliver superior performance. When you do them both, you connect with the consumers. And to me, that's what's important to me going forward.
You mentioned pricing. I mentioned pricing, that it was a contributor to growth. So you passed along some of those higher prices to the consumer. Are we going to expect more? Are we going to expect to pay more for our everyday products from Procter & Gamble this year? In
general, we want to provide outstanding value. There are some cases and there were some categories, and certainly some of the paper categories and others, that were impacted by input cost. When input costs go up so much that we need to pass along price, we try to do that in a very responsible way. We want to provide great value to consumers. It's been in a few categories, in a few countries, we needed to do that. And to me, consumers so far have shown they've accepted that as long as the product still delivers great value. It's typically associated with innovation when we can, so that we give the consumer an even better experience.
And a reason to pay a higher price.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Any impact on the consumer psyche and behavior from the government shutdown, which is now in record territory?
Certainly, if it were to sustain itself, it'd be a very high concern. It is a concern for all of us. We want our government operating. I haven't seen yet a big impact on the business, the category sizes, but do I think it will over time? Certainly, if it were to extend itself.
The last few months of 2018 were rocky in the markets. I mean, this period of incredible volatility. And there were concerns about the U.S. slowing down, whether the consumer had peaked. How did you read the volatility in the markets? Well,
the volatility in the markets, to me, you were not seeing in the categories. So in the consumer categories, we weren't seeing big gyrations in category size. And it's evidenced in our top line results, the plus 4%. Certainly, we all see the challenging trade situation. To me, that concerns people, concerns us. We want to see free and open trade. We think that's right to do and better for all stakeholders. And certainly, we hope for a good resolution. But I have not seen, as much as we've heard about this, I haven't seen evidence in category size in most of the business categories we operate in, and in most of the countries we operate in, where we've seen that depressed. There is a risk, if there's too much bad news, it'll affect consumer confidence. And when consumer confidence goes down, you often will see it show up in category size or category growth, not absolute size, but the growth rate. And the growth rate has not been slowing down. It's slightly higher this year than it was last year, even with all the volatility.
Globally or in the U.S.?
Both U.S. and globally, it's a little bit higher than it was before. You know, whether it was 2.5% or so to moving more to 3%, but I have not seen.
So when you hear talk of recession, what are you thinking?
It's certainly not in the consumer categories right now. Am I concerned if some of these things don't get resolved? Yes. But if you look at, again, the growth rate of categories in the major countries, we're not seeing significant drops. In aggregate, it's up about 0.5 point.
Do you see any pain globally? Which countries?
Well, certainly, we've seen some volatility in Turkey. We've seen some volatility in Argentina, some that have had very high foreign exchange changes and other disruptions. But even Turkey, you've seen now the Turkish lira strengthen a bit, and that seems to be getting more stable. But certainly there are a number of countries that tend to have more volatility, some in Latin America, and as I said, Turkey. But generally what I see right now, there's actually a little more stability. The dollar seems to have stabilized. And
you must be very happy about that.
That's a positive thing. Yes, that's a positive thing. And even a little bit weaker would be even better.
Well, one thing that's contributed is Europe has slowed down
its
growth. So what are you seeing there, especially with Brexit looming?
Brexit is a high concern. We have to prepare for all eventualities. We have to make sure, and we're trying to reassure our consumers on whether it's in the UK or the balance of the EU, we'll be there for them with our products. But if Brexit is a hard exit, it will disrupt the supply chains. We make some things in the UK that we ship to Europe and other countries. We make a number of things on continental Europe that we ship into the UK. So we have to be ready.
What does that mean? Consumers are going to pay higher prices in Europe?
It depends what happens. See, we don't know. What we are doing is making sure we have the ability to supply them. You know, what the cost will be, I don't think we know right now. And that's a real concern. Uncertainty is not good for business, it's not good for the consumers. So I think we all hope for, to me, an appropriate ending to this, where there is an ability to ship back and forth without any kind of tariff. If there is a tariff, certainly that puts cost in the system, and that'll have to be addressed.
Higher prices for both Europeans and British consumers?
It depends, again, how it works. If you can tell me what which way the tariffs will be. I have no
idea how it's going to end up.
And neither does anybody else. And that's the real challenge right now. So the one thing we do know is we want to have consumers, we want to have products on the shelf for consumers in the UK and in continental Europe. So we have to look at our supply chains, and we have to have contingency plans for almost any eventuality, which is challenging right now.
How are you planning contingency plans if the trade war does not get resolved by the March 1st deadline between the U.S. and China?
For most of our products that we sell in the U.S., we make in the U.S. For the vast majority of products we make in China, or that we sell in China, we make in China. So certainly the first thing we want to do is, where we can, we want to localize our supply chains and serve the consumer and make the product in the country where they can consume it, where it's economically possible. That's true today for the U.S. and China. So that does minimize the impact we have. But to me, there's a broader impact on the economy if this thing goes in a way that disadvantages both countries. And so I think it's in the best interest of the U.S. and China to find an amicable solution to the trade
And you're
war.
not really seeing an impact from the Chinese consumer?
Today, we reported the last quarter was our best quarter in China in a number of years. If I look at the last 6 months, it's ahead of the previous year. If I look at the previous year, it's ahead of the year before that. So what I am seeing is the consumer respond to innovation in great value. The superiority strategy is really working, and there's no evidence in the category size or in our growth rate, our results that we just reported, that the consumer is pulling back in the consumer categories we compete in.